Welcome to Sendor's Sacred Spaces with Sendra D, Luxury Unleashed. I'm your host, Sendra D, and I invite you to join me on a journey through the most exclusive realms of luxury living. In each episode, we'll explore everything from extraordinary properties and bespoke designs to the art of fine dining, private aviation, hard asset investing. Whether you're seeking inspiration for your own sacred space or simply indulging in the beauty of life's finest offering, this podcast is for you. It is your gateway to the ultimate luxury experience. But luxury isn't just about the material. It's about enriching the soul. That's why we delve into the stories behind these spaces and the people who create them. Closer to the heart of what makes luxury truly special. So if you're ready to unleash the luxury within and embrace a life of elegance and purpose, subscribe now and join me on Sendor Sacred Spaces with Sendra D, Luxury Unleashed. Because luxury isn't just a lifestyle, it is an extraordinary way of being. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Sendor Sacred Spaces. Of course, you know, this podcast was launched with you in mind. Those of you who have a unique mindset of affluence from within. I've shared with you very openly and candidly about my journey of recovery. 25 years on this journey. That is my greatest accomplishment, I must say. But I don't recommend it if you're weak-hearted. It is not for the faint of heart. You know, I started this journey in Miami not because my life I was lacking in any way the external components of what society says should be success. I was a banker. I was doing a graduate degree. I lived in Aventura, Florida, and I could go within 5 minutes to the beach. And, you know, life was very good, except I was very miserable inside. I was miserable because I felt that nothing could fill the hole that was within. So I found what we call 12 steps. I found what many people now call the recovery movement, and it inspired me to greatness. And I had one concern. How am I going to keep my luxurious lifestyle in balance being sober? Well, again, it's not done perfectly every day, but I can say I do my best to satisfy my worldly needs as well as satisfy my spiritual and my mental health needs. This is why I launched this podcast. And today I have with me someone who's in that part of Florida where I got sober, and he's in South Florida. I have with me Mark Astor. He is a British attorney who actually gave up his homeland to come join us in the United States of America. I have to say, America is a little bit more fun. You know, I'm not from here either. I was born in Haiti, but you know what? The freedom that we have here is unprecedented. So I would like to tell you a little bit about my guest today. Well, of course, I mentioned already, he was born in Britain. I'm not sure exactly well. I'll let him tell you. And he went to Nova Southeastern University, which I also did. He obtained a law degree. He is married he has two fantastic dogs. I actually saw in his video, he's not shy about telling you how much he loves being a furry dad. So, and then I started looking more into who he is. He is someone who's passionate about the recovery movement in the law profession. That's very rare because, you know, people get in trouble. Of course, I had a DUI, and I'm very candid about that. But that's not when my recovery journey started. I had a DUI, which required that I get an attorney in order to meet the court's requirement. But he is someone who has dedicated his career to the recovery and mental health community. And I'm so grateful to you, Mark, for that dedication. But I would like you to go ahead and tell us a little bit more. Of course, I could read the bio, but I would like you to tell the audience a little bit more about who you are and what inspired you navigate this space, because it is very emotional, and it's, again, it requires toughness, not just toughness for those going through it, but those around them, right, to support them. Welcome to the Sendor Sacred Space podcast with Sendra D, Luxury Unleashed. And I say luxury from within, which is why recovery is such an important topic. So, Mark, again, welcome. And tell us a little bit more about who you are and what inspired you to navigate in this space.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to come on your podcast and be a guest. And, I know before we came on, you shared a little bit of your story. And so I'm very grateful that you have me on, but I think sharing your story is so important, and you have no idea how many people who are going to see this and are familiar with the story, and you're going to inspire them to change their lives for a myriad of reasons. But I think the recovery, is inspirational. And so thank you for that and for sharing your story. So a little bit about me. So I'm the co-founder, along with my wife, of a law firm. We're based here in Palm Beach County. We also have an office in Boston, Massachusetts, and our mission is to save families whose loved ones have substance use, mental health disorders, and failed attempts at recovery. So my team and I speak to families from all over the country, as far west as Hawaii, as far north as, Michigan and New York and New Jersey, and, that Northeast corridor. And occasionally we get a call from outside of the country. I've had a couple of clients in Italy, I had one in Panama, and they're calling us because they have a family member who has been suffering for years and years and years with a behavioral health issue. Drugs, mental illness, treatment that never seems to work, medications that don't seem to work, or their loved ones simply won't take those medications. Perhaps they've had a trip to the emergency room. Perhaps they've had some experience in the criminal justice system. And they come to us because the family has reached the point where they are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they ask us to fix that problem. And that's what we do. So there are three ways that we attack the problem. The first is the legal component. There's three statutes that we operate here under in Florida, and I'll talk to you about those in a second. Mm-hmm. There is what I call the clinical component. So I have two clinicians on staff, the a la carte option for families if they want it, that help us to put together the right program. Because obviously you can go to treatment and you can stay in treatment, but if you don't stay in treatment long enough in the right clinically appropriate facility, then getting a great result, getting that miracle of recovery becomes very difficult. So they help us to put together the right clinical program. And then the third component is what I call law enforcement. So I have a private investigator on staff who has a team of his own investigators, because we get a lot of calls for people on the streets, missing people. And if I can get a call order to pick somebody up, to grab them, get them to a place of safety, rather than wait for the police to go do it, we'll do it ourselves. And it's not because the police don't care, it's just that they don't have the resources to go looking for some of our people. And, with us, time is the enemy, right? We need to get people to a place of safety until otherwise something tragic can happen. And so those are the three main components that we use to save a family, because it's really the family that's sick. I mean, they're so used to this craziness, they don't know any other way. And so, that's why they call it a family disease, because it's like a metastasizing cancer. It is literally destroying the family from within. And so they come to us to solve that problem. So that's what we do.
Thank you so much. I must say, I'm very familiar with what you call Baker acting, because when I had I think it was almost a year, there was someone who came into my life through recovery. Her name was Pilar. She is my angel, because we were born in exactly the same day, same, well, different country. Her father was Jewish, her mother was from Argentina, of course, different, culture, but same exact birthday. She could not stay sober. And I had about almost a year. And I remember getting a call in the middle of the night, because I was that person who was going to rescue everyone, because they told me to do service early on. And, I was, for some reason, the person called me. I can't remember the details. It was 24 years ago. He said she was about to get Baker acted. She was going to, I want you to go into details as to what that, but let me tell you my experience. So he called me into the hospital. I had to go to the hospital. And she had been using more than just alcohol. My bottom was with alcohol. I had used other things, but by the time I got sober, I had put away everything else. So she was under the influence of everything, and she was about to surrender herself to the state. The state meaning they take control of your life. And it was just myself and her friend Her father, who lived in Aventura, coincidentally, where I lived, had had enough. He wanted nothing to do with her. So the two of us were just there. I was a very naive person to think that I could take this on. That's how I know how heavy such an issue is for the family, because I've never had to deal with people outside of, just people I see in the room as alcoholics. My family, of course, I had a few, but to go through the legal process of helping someone get help when they are resistant to that help. Sometimes the state has to step in, and that's what Baker acting is. Explain to the audience, please, what that involves.
Okay, so I'll talk about Baker, but maybe if you don't mind, Sendra, there's two other statutes that we operate under, because and sometimes it may be all three at once. So there's the Marchman Act.
Feel free. This is your show.
Well, I'm just a guest, but I appreciate the sentiment. There's the Marchman Act, which is a statute that's unique to Florida, which allows us to put somebody into treatment for chunks of up to 90 days, which can be repeated when there's a primary substance use disorder, or when we can prove there's a primary substance use disorder. There's the guardianship statute, which traditionally had been really intended for elderly people. But my brilliant wife came along with the idea because she'd spent many years in Massachusetts in a past life helping people with the guardianship process. We decided we thought we could try to use it for cases that like the ones we handle, where there's serious behavioral health issues, and the family needs a lot more control than a Marchman Act can give them. And then, as you pointed out, the Baker Act, and that is as you correctly pointed out, which most people don't know, it's a statute that allows the state of Florida to take custody of you and make you a temporary ward of the state, where there is where somebody is in immediate need of mental health services, i.e. they may be suicidal. And so depending on the case, it's not unusual for us to be working a Marchman Act and a guardianship together at the same time. So we're in two different courtrooms. And then in the middle of this, somebody gets Baker Acted because they have some type of break. And so understanding how all three of these statutes really work together is important, because they do work together. And then obviously the criminal arena, which I had on my mind for a second, because I was prosecutor for a long time too.
Correct. We forgot to mention that you did work for the state. You were a prosecutor.
I was a prosecutor and I did defense work. And so sometimes in the middle of all of this, somebody can be arrested and end up in the county jail, or when the family calls us, the person's already in the county jail. And while we don't handle that aspect of the case, we will bring in criminal counsel. Understanding how all of that stuff really works together is incredibly important, because once you do, then you can navigate the system and get the case to go where you need it to go, which is basically to keep somebody, out of the system, whatever that might be.
Right.
And into treatment, so they can start to get better, and the family can start to experience that miracle that you've have experienced. So that's
fantastic. Thank you so much for that clarification, because I know a lot of people in the audience are wondering what that is like. In the UK, I actually went to business school sober, and people found it shocking. They couldn't understand how someone could stay sober for a day, let alone by the time I got to business school, I had about 8 years, I think. 7 years, 8 years. They could not understand it. And it was a cultural shock to me, because people here in the United States applauded me. I was shunned in the UK for being sober, I'll be honest with you, in business school, not all over the UK, of course, but in business school, because it was a very alcoholic culture. And for those of you who were in my business cohort, well, if you need help, let me know. That's what we both help, we help those. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I agree with you. I mean, look, even in law school, we live in a culture where alcohol is almost, for a lot of people, even socially, it's become part of their life. Correct. And I think to a certain degree, perhaps marijuana has become that way too. But
that's a good point.
Yeah, especially in England. I mean, it is a very alcohol-driven society, and I've never been a big drinker, but I have a lot of friends that are, and to me, that was never a fun social activity. But I could see how there could be peer pressure on people, and it would make it a very difficult environment to even pursue some type of recovery. And Absolutely. So, one of the sort of things that we try to impart on a family is that you have to be in an environment that supports recovery. If that means you have to cut off the friends that you used to go party with,
Absolutely,
then that's the way it has to be. You cannot live in that environment and expect to maintain recovery. It's just impossible. So
Absolutely, I can attest to that. I only reintegrated people in my life, and even now at 25 years, you could tell the difference of my mind, where it is, and those people, because you change, but necessarily those people change. I mean, they're good people, I'm sure, but I always prioritize myself. But also, you touched on something that is very important. I mean, I have smoked marijuana. I am not shy about it, of course. Back when I was using marijuana, it was never my drug of choice, as they say in recovery, because I'm a very active person and it put me to sleep. I would just eat and sleep under the influence of marijuana. And I was like, what is this? But there are people, it affects people differently. But what I've realized recently and what is concerning to me is marijuana has been legalized. And people think that they could just grip and go to a dispensary and load up on whatever gummies, whatever. I'm not sure how they're selling them. But what's concerning to me is the accessibility of it and how people are abusing it right now. And people think, oh, well, it's just a little bit because I have anxiety and I need to take it. But there is, with everything, you should use it in moderation. But I think it's becoming abused more than it was in the past because it's so readily available on every street corner. Every vape store, I think now can prescribe marijuana, correct? I mean, if you have the special license, you could do that. You can
Yeah,
get.
so what's happened here in Florida is that it hasn't become legalized recreationally. It's legalized for medicinal purposes, but which means you have to go get a card. But it's so ridiculously easy to get a card, Sandra. It's just a joke. And I think one of the misnomers that people have, especially when I speak to families, and I mean, you sort of know when somebody's using just because of the behavior of their loved one, right?
Absolutely.
Especially because it can really drive mental illness with a passion.
Absolutely.
And I think there's this misnomer when they say, well, he or she has a card, and the idea that it's because it's legal, it's safe, is simply not true. I mean, I won't age you, but I would tell I'm a child of the 80s, growing up in England, and I had a lot of friends who smoked marijuana, and I have not used it, but I was around it. And I really thought when they legalized it here in Florida that it wasn't going to be that big of a deal. But a good friend of mine in the recovery, and she said, Mark, I'm telling you, this is a gateway drug and it's going to be
It is
dangerous.
a gateway drug.
And he was
Without a doubt.
100% right, because one of the two things that really changed the dynamics of our cases, which really shifted them from primary substance use back in 2016 when I opened up my law office out of the local library here, that made that shift to really mental illness and drug-driven mental illness, is marijuana.
Absolutely.
That has been a major game changer in the cases that we see, the severity of the cases, and then the need for really appropriate clinical resources and maybe some med compliance on those cases is key and critical. I mean, this is a game changer for us, and we're
Yeah.
handling it. But as you point out, it's dangerous stuff.
It is dangerous stuff. And of course, it affects everybody differently. And some people would say, well, I have anxiety to manage. As someone who myself, I experience anxiety because why I drank. I had to get to the root cause of it because I'm one of those people that says, okay, that's great that I don't drink anymore, but it seems that there's more to the story. Where do I go from here? And of course, the universe seems to bring me more information and says, well, take a look at anxiety, take a look at trauma. So, of course, there are many people, and let me go a little bit deeper. And some people would say, don't racial profile, but I'm going to do that. Unfortunately, I'm aware that the many people in the box that I check as a woman of color. So I'm from Haiti originally. Haiti has so much trauma. And with that, pile on drug addiction and alcohol addiction, substance abuse. You're only pushing it down until the problem erupts. And I can only speak about my own experience. And what I'd like to say is, there's a culture out there that promotes smoking marijuana in the Black culture. I mean, there are celebrities out there, I should say, that are promoting the smoking marijuana. I mean, you look at these videos, you see these young men just smoking and everything. How cool that is. If he's making millions of dollars, that must be, if I'm smoking a flake. I'll give you an example. My father was a powerful man, and I saw him smoke and drink, and I thought that's what success was. I had to smoke and drink to feel successful until I realized my father was probably 6'3" and I'm 5'6", and I couldn't drink like my father. But also you learn by example, right? So you see people that you respect and that you appreciate, that you look up to, do something, you automatically think it's the next best thing for me to do. And so what I mean is, when we look at culture, because I have to say that I don't see, when we look at different ethnic groups, I don't see that the promotion of marijuana in the white Anglo culture as much as I see it promoted in the Black culture. I'm not one to go get into race, but I have to say that there seems to be a pattern. And so most of the people who are using marijuana, I would say it's because they have unresolved trauma. And I go around the block to come back to this point to say, if there is unresolved trauma, there is not a drug on the planet that's going to make you feel comfortable in your skin. It is important that you address the issue. It is painful to go back into the history, to go back. Sometimes it's generational. But at the end of the day, it is so worth the journey. You're doing it for generations to come. And I make that point only because marijuana is that gateway drug. I remember exactly what it felt like when I took the first, like I took the first and inhaled for the first time. There was a sense of relief, right? So that people, and they tell you, you will never feel that way again. That first drink may bring relief, but you can't drink enough and you can't smoke enough to actually push the pain down that is causing you to gravitate to those substances. And I'm saying a lot, and I don't want to get too much into my story, but I'm just trying to help the audience understand why it's so detrimental that we go the healing route. So you are someone who's more of a legal professional. You have a law practice that is a concierge for mental health and for substance abuse. You must get pulled into the emotional side of things. Tell to me how that is for you.
Yeah, my father, who I lost just over 8 years ago. In fact, I lost him
I'm
11.
sorry for your loss.
Thank you. I lost him 11 months after I opened up the law firm, so he didn't get to see what this became. But he used to, and he wasn't an educated man. He left school at 14 and my mother 16. So I come up from somewhat humble beginnings. But that's not unusual in England, right? I mean, that's a lot. It's a working class.
My parents were too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got I'm the one, but I got the substance. But go ahead. Tell me about that.
And he used to say to me, when a client calls you, remember, nobody wants to hire a lawyer and they most definitely don't want to give you any money. So if they're coming to you, it's because they're desperate and you have to honor that and respect it. And so by the time that clients come to us, the family has been trying to deal with this for years. I mean, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, sometimes even longer. And so they have basically come to us as the last port of call to try and solve this problem. And as I tell families, look, I don't have a magic pill or a magic wand. If I did, I promise I'd wave it, and I'd wave it for free just to end your suffering. But what I have is hope, because when somebody has been sick for that long, when the family has been suffering for that long, it takes time. And so when they first come to us, there is this sort of need to get it done as quickly as possible, right? And look, we file just about every one of our cases on an emergency basis, which means we court very quickly, but the legal process can take a couple of weeks. I mean, that's just the way the courts work. And I'm, as an officer of the court, I have to respect that and deal with it. But yeah, they come to us, and the idea that there could finally be an answer is so overwhelming sometimes that it is hard to deal with that emotional component. And I think one of the things that we've done is we've been able, over time, been able to build out a team to help with that. So for the first 7 years, it was just me and my wife, and we did everything in the business, the sales, the marketing, going to court, drafting the pleadings, meeting with the clients. And it became so overwhelming that I finally, only 3 months ago, that I stopped working 7 days a week, because it was physically starting to slowly kill me. So I had to step back a little bit. So I spend a lot more time talking about what we're doing with amazing people like you, which I love to do. So this is a very easy ask. But what I have a whole team of people now, instead of just 2 of us, there's 10 of us. And I have paralegals. We just hired our second associate, but I have 2 case managers, people that the families can reach out to, because the lawyers aren't always available. If we're not in court or doing something else legal, it's not always easy to get a hold of us. And so I tell the families, look, I have all these wonderful resources. You can call and speak to Bailey or Adriana or whoever. And if you need to talk to somebody, we're here for you. Now, if you need somebody who can help you clinically, we also have, I can also make a referral to, a family therapist. And I'm a big fan of that, because I think that it's the family unit that needs to heal, right? And while their loved one is in treatment, and I emphasize to them, they have to take time to heal too, because they have become so traumatized by the craziness, the insanity of what's been going on here. They don't know any other way to live. And so if their loved one's going to spend the next 6, 9 months, a year healing, and they don't, I think that causes a problem, because now the family is still stuck in that fight or flight mode, and their loved one is suddenly starting to, is unplugged from the matrix,
Absolutely.
and they've come into the real world finally. But when somebody is sick, it's as if their brain has been kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to get them out of that proverbial rabbit hole, but it takes time. And so it's so important that while their loved one is healing, the family is doing that too. And so sometimes they come to us, they're very frantic, very emotional, and we have to be good at managing that. But we have to make sure that we give them enough time. But we also have to be conscious of the fact that we have a lot, not a lot of families, but we work with many families, and they all need to be helped and nurtured and cared for. So we have to be careful of how we do that. I never like to ignore anybody. So I also have to be mindful of my own health, because it had started to suffer a couple of months ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just being a little bit more careful with myself, because I'm 58 and I've noticed I just don't bounce back quite as quickly as I used to. So we have to be careful, because if I get sick, I'm no use to anybody.
That's exactly right. Well, the thing is, when I first got sober, thank you so much for that. And I can imagine, I hear that your practice is holistic, because that's so important in this process. There's not one quick fix pill. Even if, I was one of the fortunate one, I didn't go to treatment. I just walked in the doors, the 12-step groups, and I surrounded myself with successful people in the program, especially women. They say women stick to the women, the men stick to the men. And so sometimes, you cross that line and find out why they tell you that. But at the end of the day, I was very determined that I would never, I'd never go back out. And I one day at a time, I've managed to maintain that. But again, for you, the person on the outside, it does take a toll. I have to say, the people around me. That's why I was very transparent with my recovery for those people, my coworkers, my colleagues, my family, especially. I come from a culture where people don't understand this. So those people who didn't understand, I just chose to stay away from them rather than spend too much time explaining. But again, for those people, for those who are on the outside, who actually just want to help. Like I said, I actually ended up sponsoring many, many women. I had a 3-quarter-way house in Miami off of Biscayne Boulevard when I was 2 years sober. I was recommended not to have to do that, but I was a codependent that wanted to fix the world. So I opened a 3-quarter-way house for women who were young women between 18 and 21. And I just begged for that house to close, but I learned quite a bit from it. So you can get pulled into other people's stories so easily if you're not careful, which is why I'm grateful that you're able to share that. As a legal professional, you're the one that actually needs to be more sober than the sober person. So that's hard, and it takes a certain skill set. And I have no doubt that you're excellent. Both you and your wife are excellent at it. Tell me what the difference is as dealing with Florida versus Massachusetts. Which one is more complex to navigate?
Okay, so in Massachusetts, they have Section 12, which is their version of the Baker Act.
Mm-hmm.
They have Section 35, which is their version of the Marchman Act. Now,
before we dive back in, it is a pleasure to tell you that my book, Sendor Inner Luxury, Unlock the Secret to Your Luxurious Self, now on Kindle, and as well as on paperback. So feel free to rush and get a copy for your loved ones. In addition, if you are loving these extraordinary conversations about luxury, about balance, about emotional intelligence, about a little bit of politics, a little bit of spirituality, if you're loving all of it, well, rush to Amazon and get my book. You will learn emotional balance is from within. You will learn to elevate yourself to the frequency that you wish to express in the world. So there can be more love, more peace, more harmony. But there's more. You can rush to pre-order my next book, which is Sendor, Guide to Luxury Living and Emotional Balance. Well, for me, my brand is all about living from within, emotional balance, emotional intelligence, and luxury. And for me, these books are flowing endlessly from me to you with so much love. Let me know what you think. Let me know after you read it. Put a comment, put a review. I'd love to hear from you.
They also have guardianship, But I think the big difference, especially with the Section 35, which is their version of Marchman, is you got to use a Section 35 facility. Here in Florida, I mean, if there's resources, there's health insurance, I like to use a private facility, and every county has their own public behavioral health facilities, whether it be for the Baker Act or even for Marchman Act. Especially when it comes to getting somebody into treatment. The problem with the county facilities is that they are typically always full. It's really hard to get a bed there, and they want to sort of cycle people in and out as quickly as possible. And that's not a rub on them in terms of desire to help people, but the resources are limited if you are going to a county facility. And I'm not saying that's right. I think it's frankly shameful that treatment's not available to everybody, regardless of their financial resources. But fortunately, it is the way the facilities work in terms of, private versus public. And that's unfortunate. But if we can get somebody into a private facility, then I think the chances of success are better. Does that mean that you can't get well and recover in a county facility? No. There's plenty of people out there who have done that. But just trying to get a bed is not always the easiest thing. And I think that if there's a time lag between someone's desire or a court order to go to treatment and the bed being available, to me, that time frame is a recipe for disaster, because they're going to say, well, I'm going into treatment in 3 weeks. There'll be a bed available in 3 weeks. So I don't need to worry about, abstaining right now. I can just go ahead and use, because in 3 weeks, it's going to get addressed. And so I don't like to do that. Once I'm involved in a case, I want somebody in treatment very, very quickly. I mean, depending on what we're filing, I want them picked up within a couple of hours of me filing something, and then we can go back into court and have a full-blown hearing in front of the judge. But I want to get them off the streets as quickly as possible, because I don't want to take any chances. I don't like to be in that position. But every once in a while, Sendra, we do lose somebody. It doesn't happen a lot, but I know, from experience that sometimes we're going to get that call. Last year, I think we didn't lose anybody, but the year before that, we did lose a couple of people. And that is a very, very difficult phone call to get, because we take the work personally. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. I mean, practicing in this area it saved me as a lawyer, because for a long time I didn't want to practice. I met my wife through it. I have 2 amazing stepchildren through that. And, we're about to get involved with a non-for-profit. And because we've been able to help a lot of people, we're now able to help a lot more people. And hopefully at some point we'll give a lot more away for free. So, it's become a bit of a labor of love, what we do. But to go back to what you were talking about, I'm sorry if I digress.
Digress as much as you would like.
Sorry, I could talk about this for days.
So could I. I've been talking about it for 25 years.
I love it. I love it. I think Florida is a better place to go for treatment. There are treatment options in Massachusetts. I think it's harder to get somebody to treatment up there. I just put out a video on social media right before we went on. And I just talked about, why should you come to Florida for treatment? And number one, I think it's because we have this legal framework with the Marchman Act and the Guardianship and Baker Act, where if we navigate correctly, we can get somebody into treatment and keep them there long enough. And two, we have good treatment down here. We had a task force, a federally funded task force down here in Palm Beach County. And all these bad actors, the guy, the individuals who were billing insurance companies and making people give a urine sample every 48 hours so they could milk the insurance, they got arrested. These unscrupulous treatment centers that were peddling drugs and prostitution. Those guys, those guys are in prison. They're going to spend the rest of their life in prison. We had a lot of people down here who were doing unscrupulous things. We had the pill mills down here who were peddling pain medications. And there was two brothers, twins, who were notorious for that. They went to prison. And so we've really cleaned up the industry here in terms of getting rid of all the bad actors. And I can tell you, my wife and I spend a great deal of time, going to different treatment centers, meeting the people that work there. Because if I don't know who the facility is, I don't want to work with them. And if I know the facility is, ethically challenged, I would say, I'll tell the family, listen, I got my reservations. You decide what you want to do. I'm just telling you, I'm just going to share with you my experience with this particular facility. And if it's a facility that we work with, I'll tell them, listen, we've had great results with that facility. You have to work the program. I mean, it's not magic, but I think Florida is the best place to come for treatment. I think in fact, we were going up, my stepson was a hockey player, and we used to spend a lot of time going up there for the games. And while we were up there, we'd go up a day or two early and we'd go check out various treatment centers. And I think there's some nice programs up there. I just don't know if they have the legal framework that is necessary to get somebody in and keep them there long enough and still give the family some flexibility in terms of, deciding where their loved one goes and just making some decisions. So I think Mass is good. I think Florida's better. If
I
you,
agree. And the weather is definitely better. I mean, I would definitely not want
yeah.
to suffer inside as I suffer the cold outside in Massachusetts. I grew up in Maryland, so I know how cold the Northeast can get. So thank you so much for that. And of course, there is no, unless it's, I mediate with a lot of attorneys, and I could tell that each attorney has a different style they bring, as in any mediator. There are some who are very stoic, who just matter of factly, and those are the ones that you see them representing people who have gotten in trouble with the law as a result of the addictions. But it's nice to see that you're one of those people who have that empathetic disposition that makes a big difference. So I'm thankful to you for that, for all that service you've done. But I wanted to touch a little bit also about, I want to go back to Title X. Title IX, complicated because when you add substance to it, and so if you have anyone who's been accused of any kind of sexual assault and now they're under the influence and they're also, I say, under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Have you had those cases, and how complex is it to navigate those cases versus just a simple drug misdemeanor?
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you, Sandra. I haven't had those kinds of cases. I'm not typically in federal court. I'm in state court. I've had one client over the years who was in federal court, and he was a white collar crime guy who got arrested and convicted of securities fraud. I was brought in after the fact, after his very expensive lawyers couldn't keep him out of prison. And actually, I will tell you, one of the things that he worked while he was in federal custody was they had a drug program that was a 9-month long program, and he did it, and he's become a very strong advocate for the recovery community. And so I think that even in, depending on whether you're in state and federal, because once you're in the criminal system, it's a different ballgame, right? I mean, you are really in the hands of the government. But the prisons have gotten better at offering resources for people who are
Have to.
in recovery. But I will tell you, if you end up, especially if you end up in prison, and I think there's this sort of idea that you go to club fed, there's nothing club about it. It is a hardcore prison, okay? And I can only tell you what it does, sending somebody to prison does to that person and to the family. And look,
Yeah.
I'm probably look, I was prosecutor for a long time. I put a lot of nasty people in prison. So I'm probably on the conservative side when it comes to, punishing people for the appropriate crime, right? You do the crime, you should do the time.
Mhm.
But you have to understand what that does to the family. It really is. I mean, this guy lost everything: his wife, his kids, his house. I mean, everything, on a material level. I mean, they stripped him to the bone. And then, there was some horrible things that happened to him in prison. I really, they denied him medical care. I really thought they were going to try to kill him. I mean, it seemed that way. So I think we've gotten better at helping people in the prison system. When I was a prosecutor, there was really no resources for people who came into the state system, had behavioral health issues. We now have these specialty courts like Veterans Court and Drug Court and Mental Health Court. But again, if it's a violent offense, you're probably not going to qualify for any of those things. They're going to look to lock you up. That is the mandate here in Florida. Punish first, rehabilitate second.
Well,
So we've gotten better at it, but it's not perfect.
absolutely. No, it's definitely a work in progress, as they say. But also, you touched on a topic that, of course, close to me, which is, finance and investment. I believe there's an epidemic of addiction in on Wall Street, and it's not being addressed enough. I don't even know how to. That's why I'm very open about my recovery, because, like I said, I was traumatized in business school because no one wanted to talk. I was actually told, you will never be invited to our parties," and I was like, "Why? I'm nice." And I guess I wasn't fun, but I was nice. But I actually think I'm fun without drinking. But that's what they said. It's not so much that they didn't like me, and it took me some years to process. I came because I threatened their reality. I did. I threatened the fact that they normalized alcohol, and here I am, happy go lucky, and I'm just like, "Hi, I'm from America," which they call La La Land, and I'm telling them there is life without drinking, and that shattered their norm. So they didn't want me around. So go ahead.
Well, I was gonna agree with you. Yeah, I mean, from what I've learned since representing this one particular client, I mean, there is a culture of drug use on Wall Street. It is just, hey, we use Coke and drink, and that's, essentially you say come to a party. I don't think they meant come to the party; they meant come and party, right?
Right. Absolutely. I was in banking, trust me. I
Yeah.
remember going to one of those company, what do you call them, like the annual, like weekend, and everybody was high and drunk. Everybody was drunk and high. And I remember going to the last one, they flew me to Hawaii. And this is when I worked for Bank of America. I was so drunk I could barely stand. I was so drunk. No, I'm sorry. I wasn't drunk then. I was already sober. But the person who came with me was completely drunk. And I was like, you're supposed to help me stay sober. Here you are drunk. And this was a family member. And so I came to realize what helped me is rely on no one, because he was supposed to be my chaperone. I think this was in 99. Yeah, I had 6 months sober. No, yeah, about 6 months sober. And I flew to Hawaii and I said, come with me. And it was, a family member. He was drunk. And I was just trying to put him together. And I realized there's no one by my side. And that's a message for the audience. You have to make a decision. How bad do you want this? How bad do you want this? Because it's never, somebody told me, one of my friends who I met earlier on, she says, we don't promise you an easy life. We promise you sobriety. Okay. So sobriety is, again, something that you have to work for. But I also wanted to touch on the fact that, I'm sure you work across the scale, I mean, across ages. Like, how young has been some of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, our typical client, Sendra, is in the sort of the 25 to 45 age group. Do I see people older? I do. I've seen people into their 60s. We've also had some, 15, 16-year-olds who had substance use issues. And a lot of that revolves around marijuana use. And sometimes it starts because somebody along the way said they needed to take something like Adderall or Ritalin, and then their brain chemistry gets whacked out. And the next thing you know, they're using legalized marijuana. But we don't see a lot of minors. I mean, first of all, there's just not a lot of resources for children. I mean, finding a treatment center is not so easy for somebody who's under 18. A lot of the facilities
Really
cater to adults. They're few and far between. And again, we spend this much time doing it. We've got facilities that we work with. But most of our of the people that we're putting into treatment are 25 to 45. That is sort of our avatar in terms of the age group. But it's not always the parents and adult child. It could be the adult child who's putting the parent into treatment, or it could be divorced parents who come together because they have a child, an adult child that they love. I've seen siblings put each other into treatment. And I will tell you something else. I'm a Florida bar approved CLE provider because we have to get continuing education credits. Last week I drove across the West Coast to Sarasota, and I did a presentation to 65 lawyers for the Sarasota County Bar Association, and they made me incredibly welcome. They were so gracious. But one of the things that when I talk to a group of lawyers, I always talk about, we have here in Florida called Florida Lawyers Assistance. It's the Florida bar's way of taking care of its own. So if you've got a behavioral health issue and you call the Florida bar and say, hey, I need help, they'll give it to you. They'll give you the resources. But I put a number of lawyers in treatment, Sandra. I mean, the legal profession attracts a certain type of individual.
Absolutely.
And they say that lawyers are twice as likely to develop some type of behavioral health issue. And so, I mean, that's what, it is stressful practicing law, but imagine practicing law with people who are dealing with the issues that we're discussing and trying to maintain your own mental health. Not so easy. And that's what sort of, really wear me down. I mean, and just as an aside, I think that your story is, I think it's incredible. I don't know any other way to put it. The fact that you could do this, families that come to me and they say, well, I don't understand why can't he decide to go to treatment? Why can't she decide? And I say, well, it has to do with this whole, kidnapped brain syndrome, but it is very, very rare to see somebody like you that has the conscious wherewithal, one, to know they have a problem, and two, to have the internal strength and fortitude to actually say, okay, I'm done with this. I'm going to go get help, whatever that looks like. And it's different for every person. So, I mean, I don't know if your viewers grasp the enormity.
I don't think anyone understands. They see me, my outsides. They don't understand the process that goes within. So I wanted to share that the young woman that I've talked about, Pilar, she eventually passed on. She passed on, I believe I had probably a year or two sober. That shook me from within. And I saw so many people. I used to take meetings to different, not homeless shelter, but recovery homes. And a lot of the women that went back out, it was always about, relationship issues, children issues. So I looked at those triggers and said, I need to be more vigilant. around my recovery to make sure that I become more aware of what could be a potential trap for me. So I had a very supportive mother. My mother and my aunt, the women around me were just phenomenal. So I had a spiritual mom, which she was 15 years sober when I came in. She passed on 2 years ago. Her name was Rachel. And my mother and my aunt. So those people who love you. So, and you take everyone else out of the equation. Everyone had to go. My fiance, everyone, my partner, everyone. But those people who were with me from the beginning, those are the ones that help me up. When I tell you, sometimes at night, you're thinking about that drink and it's frightening. By the break of dawn, you are like, okay, I made it another day. And you get dressed, you go to work, you made it another day. No one knows what you had to go through to get to that morning. It is definitely, and I'm open to anyone calling me. But again, for people in finance, it is very difficult. I want to touch not just finance, you talked about the legal profession. So I go to an AA meeting that is only for attorneys. It's online. It's only for attorneys. And I'm allowed because I'm a mediator.
You still go to a meeting?
I go to meetings. I don't go to AA meetings.
How often do you do a meeting?
I do religiously every year to pick up my chip. Every year.
Okay. Are you doing
I go to meetings in general. I go to 12-step meetings. I've gone to, I'd say 12-step meetings. I go to OA. I go to BDA, which is business, because I tend to spend money. And so everything, it's not so much for me because I need it. I just need to hear the message. Yeah. So in my first 5 years, I went to Al-Anon because I did have addiction in my family. I told you there was a family member who was drunk next to me when I was sober in Hawaii. And I go to CODA, Codependent Anonymous. I go to sex, love, addiction because I have that in my story. That is a very important factor for women because when we lose the drink, sometimes we become addicted to our partners. And so I've had to look at every facet of my story from the lens of recovery. I've said I go to 12-step meetings. I go to ACA because I came from a dysfunctional family. ACA is adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional family. I'm very candid about that because people need to know. I go to Violence Anonymous because emotional abuse is a real thing. Abuse of authority is a real thing. So these things are the layers. So alcohol was my first program. I mean, AA was my first program. And then you dig in to find out exactly what the next layer is. So there's Violence Anonymous. There is Rageaholic. I can easily rage. Rageaholic Anonymous. Then you have Depression Anonymous. There's a myriad of programs now. We're fortunate that we can do everything online. But for me, I am vigilant and I encourage the audience and your clients to look into what is the next step for them. But I wanted to talk about the different professions that are affected by this. You talk about lawyers, doctors as well. Doctors, and then we have bankers, we have politicians, alcohol. I grew up in Montgomery County, which is outside of Washington, D.C. That's where I did my best drinking. I mean, on Capitol Hill, I used to go to these bars. That's where you meet the high-powered people. They're all alcoholics, and so no one escapes alcoholism. It is not someone where and I think, and I've said this in meeting before, my family was affluent. My father was a diplomat. Mark, can I just say, I think I was given a pass because of the affluence that I came from, because I didn't wear dirty clothes. People were telling me, you don't look like an alcoholic. Are you sure you have a problem? I'm like, yes. I had to convince people I had a problem because I was always well dressed. But anyway, that said, I want
really good at hiding it too.
I wear extremely well. So I look the same today as I dress most like a homeless person when I'm going shopping now because I don't care about what I look. I care more about how I'm feeling. And so I want you to talk to me about what can a family do before they reach out to you to prepare that person. What are some steps that's to help someone who is in a predicament before they come to you? What do they need to consider? Not just the cost, but just the process in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, I always tell families, that if they're going to hire us, it requires a commitment of time, energy, and money. So, I mean, obviously, I don't work for free and treatment costs money. But by the time they come to us, in addition to the fact they've probably spent a significant amount of money on whatever treatment they've tried, that hasn't worked. But yeah, I mean, it's going to require some energy. And I tell families, look, think of this as a year-long project. I'm not telling you got to hire me for a year, but you need to look at this as you need to look 1 year down the road. Because we just know from experience, if you can keep somebody in recovery for a year, then they have a better chance to maintain recovery for the rest of their life. So yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to want to work with the family for 3 to 6 months. And then afterwards, as you so aptly pointed out, they got to work an aftercare program. What does that look like? Well, 12 steps, getting a sponsor, continuing with some type of outpatient services, going to AA or NA or whatever it happens to be, continuing to work on their recovery. And it's something that's going to be a part of their life forever. I mean, we've got a lot of friends in recovery, and I've got friends who have been in recovery like you for 5, 10, 15 years, and they go to a meeting almost every single week. That's just the way it is. That's what they do to maintain recovery. And so I tell families, look, at least for the first 3 to 6 months, that's going to take a little bit of your energy. And I know you're tired already, but we're going to take one loss. We're going to take the one big leap together. You're going to work, you're going to work with us. I'm not just filing a bunch of papers. Look, if you just want a lawyer to file papers, don't hire me, because you could just find a cheapy lawyer. They'll file something. If you want someone to go on the journey with you and hold your hand through this process, because it's going to be a little bit of a rough ride for the first 90 or 180 days, that's a conversation I'm willing to have with you. So it's going to take a little bit of energy, and yeah, it's going to take some time, right? And you've already been dealing with this for years and years and years. And I'm asking you to just make another commitment, at least to yourselves and your family, for another year, right? And so, a little bit of short-term pain for a very long-term gain. And so I tell families, look, this is what it looks like, right? We're going to be in court probably in the next, week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever happens to be. And then, we may have to run back into court. Why? Because the one thing that's predictable about a health type case is its unpredictability, right? Your loved one might have a good morning and a bad afternoon, a good day and a bad day, a good week and a bad week. And, I tell families, recovery is like the stock market, right? The trajectory is up, but on a daily basis, or maybe even an hourly basis, if you follow the market, and you probably could speak to this better than me, it's up and down a little bit, right? It trends up, but it's going up and down. And so you got to be able to take the bitter with the sweet, the good days and the bad days, and the ups and downs, right? I mean, if you're a long-term investor, over time, you'll make money. If you're somebody who every time the market drops, sells, you're going to lose your shirt. And it's like that in recovery. And sometimes we see families who a couple of things happen. Either a couple of weeks go by, their loved one's in treatment, and their loved one's like, oh, I feel great. I'm ready to come home. And they're like, oh, he's fine. He can come home. No, he can't. And they put on the brakes. And then, of course, what happens a week after they leave treatment? A relapse, sometimes within 24 hours, because you can't fix years of sickness in 2 weeks. It just does not happen.
Absolutely.
Right. So we deal with that type of issue. Or the family says, I spoke to my loved one and he's finally ready to go. He's been in and out of a dozen different treatment centers, never stayed longer than 10 days. And all of a sudden, because you threatened him, he's going to go. He might go, but he ain't staying. And so, sometimes the family has to experience a little bit of the up and down before they say, okay, I get it. This is how it works. And every once in a while, we get a family who just can't make that commitment. And my heart breaks for them. And it is tragic to see. But unfortunately, in those instances, very rarely does the miracle happen without some type of intervention. Maybe that's the person we're not going to save this year, which breaks my heart.
Yes, it does.
It's
so I do feel that some people are examples. If sometimes, things happen, we don't get the outcome we want. But I just really trust, I just really want to say thank you so much. And I am passionate about the work that I'm doing for myself in recovery. But I have to say, the one thing I felt that I had, the constant that I had, was my higher power, was God. For me, I call God. Not everybody embraces, spirituality when they come into the rooms. There are meetings for people who are atheistic and who are agnostic, and it's okay. But for me, that is, because that's the one thing that goes with me wherever I go. I had to rely on that power to keep me strong. And I sometimes, early in recovery, I used to get on my knees to say, please keep me sober. Now I just wake up and say thank you. Because that's enough for me to just wake up and say thank you, because I know I'm at the point where I don't need the external rituals as much as I needed. But again, everyone, if there is something if you don't have a community like I have, because I know the new generation is more connected to their phones, you don't have physical people, just turn to something within yourself and say, you know what? I just need help. Send me help. You're either gonna get the help or you're gonna have the strength to do it yourself. So, Mark, final thoughts about, first of all, I just want to say thank you. This is phenomenal. You're gonna have to come back on because we talked about a lot of things that I think could be, more valuable to the community. So if you have any comments, questions, concerns, put them in the chat. Put them if you wanted us to go into more details about topics that we just brushed on, like Title IX. I've had to find out what Title IX was. I can't
I'll have
read.
to do a little research for that, but it's okay.
Yeah, so that means, so for the audience, and tell us what are some of the things that you don't think we touched on that you think can be beneficial on the holistic side, the concierge side. If the audience is not in Florida or in Massachusetts, are there other services that offer the same type of holistic system like you do? Where can they find such legal professionals like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, look, as far as I'm aware, I think we're the only law firm in the country that has this primary focus. And I think part of the reason it works down here in Florida is because of the great treatment, but also, I mean, we have this legal framework. But more than that, if somebody's in California or New York or wherever, I mean, I brought somebody in from Hawaii to go to treatment. I mean, they got guardianship in Hawaii, but then of course there was nowhere to put that person in treatment. So we needed to.
Oh, I'm sorry to interject. So they can come from anywhere, even if and you can help them while they're in Florida. So this goes anywhere in the world. You can just come to Florida. So the governor should give me a prize for promoting Florida. Let's call Governor DeSantis right now. But so that's something you can arrange. That's the concierge service. So you can do it from anywhere as long as they are coming to Florida.
Yeah, so we need them here in Florida. So how do we get them here? Well, I've got a couple of great clinicians I work with that are great at getting people here. And worst case scenario, you would hire a lawyer. Say, I mean, maybe they're in New Jersey, right? I'm just going to pick New Jersey.
Yeah.
Or actually, let's use the Hawaii case.
Right.
So that mom had an adult son, early 40s, and he wanted to come. She wanted to come to Florida because she wanted access to the treatment. Now she had a guardianship from Hawaii. Well, there's a process here in Florida called domestication. We went to court and basically got the court here in Florida to issue a Florida guardianship based on what the judge in Hawaii had done. Why? Because that way, if her son became non-compliant with treatment, non-compliant with medication, wanted to leave the state, run away, we could go back to a judge in Florida and say, Your Honor, we have this guardianship that came from Hawaii, but the court domesticated it, gave it full faith and credit, and we want you to address this matter because we have to get this individual into treatment. He needs to take his meds, whatever it happens to be. And so we can take a Hawaii case, get it Floridaized, I just sort of made that up, and then we have a judge we can go and talk to if there's a problem while they're here. So we can help you to get them here. And then once they're here, we can either domesticate, or even if you're a resident of another state, if you are here in Florida, we can file to put you into treatment here, whether it's the Marchman or the guardianship. And you can also get Baker acted here in Florida. I've had to get people out of Florida's mental health system, I mean, more times than I can count, who were here on vacation, who came from another state, who, I had one woman this morning who got tricked into getting Baker acted. And that we could have a whole conversation for 2 hours about the Baker Act.
Right.
But I mean, so getting them here and keeping them here are very, very important. And I think that, for families that are thinking about Florida, something to think about, right? Are we willing to bring them here to Florida or get them here? And how do we do that? What does that look like in terms of time frame and expense, and what's the process? So, I mean, a lot of things to consider, but we can help you with all of that.
Well, thank you so much. As far as the legal aspect of, the legal side of things, are there any things in the works, any progress being made as far as to make it easier on people who suffer from substance abuse, and, a lot more advocates to help? Because I know these people get criminalized. So a lot of these people don't belong in jail. They end up in jail, because it's actually a substance abuse issue and not really the fact that these people are actual criminals. I mean, of course they committed a crime, but I'm saying they actually have substance abuse. Is there any progress being made?
Well, I think a couple of things, Sendra. Number one, I think we now have these specialty courts in a lot of counties, the mental health court, drug court, veterans court. That's number one. Number two, I think there has been a real there's been sort of a lot of the removal of the stigma. In other words, people now understand that it's a disease, right? That it's the
Mhm.
hijacking of the mind type thing, as opposed to he's just a bad person or she's just a bad person. And they made a conscious decision to use this, to use substances. They made a conscious decision to have, to have a schizoaffective disorder or to be
Right.
bipolar or whatever it happens to be. And so, because they made the decision to use or to be sick, well, then they can make a decision not to be. And
Mhm.
therefore, if they do something silly like get arrested, we should punish them for that. And
Correct.
I think a lot of that has been removed, and we now understand that we can help these people if we get it early enough. And so I think that there has been a shift. Is it all the way? Was it all the way where it needs to be? I don't think it is, but I think it's a whole lot better than it was, 25 years ago when I was working in
Mhm.
the criminal justice system. It's so much better now. There's so many more resources available. I think it's really changed. We're not there yet, but we're certainly along the way. And I think that people understand that, it's a whole, even just from a financial perspective, it's a whole lot cheaper to get people treatment than it is to house them for the next 10 years because they did something silly, like drove drunk
Correct.
and killed somebody.
Correct. And because the younger people, I mean, we're talking about disrupting their lives forever. It's important that we treat the cause, not the symptom. So thank you so much for that. And I just want to say thank you, the phenomenal work that you and your wife are doing. Next time you have to bring her on. I would love to meet her too. And so, yes,
And
it's phenomenal work you're doing. And for the unique system that you've established, I just want to say thank you on behalf of my community, my recovery community, and I appreciate it. So why don't you tell the audience where they can find you, the website, if you're on social media, what your social media handles are, and just generally how to best reach you.
so the main website is mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. Can I put that in the chat here? Do you want me to put that in the chat? That
We
help?
will, yeah, you can have them email it to me, and then I'll make sure that it's at the bottom of the video.
Right. So it's the mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com, or just do a Google search for me, Mark G. Astor, Astor, and I put out a video almost every day. I was actually just recording one before we went on, and it goes on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok.
TikTok.
Yeah, yeah. I
Did
put
you
it
have
out.
any calls for people relapse? I'm sorry, I shouldn't make fun of that because
No,
some people were having panic attacks when TikTok went down, and I heard they were having meltdowns. But anyway, I was
it
just
hasn't it
joking.
hasn't seemed to have interfered. I will tell you, I mean, first of all, I'm a big believer that people need to get the information so they can decide if they want to, have a conversation with us, if they want to just get a little information about Marchman, regardless or Baker Act. I put a video out almost every single day, 5-6 minutes long, and they can get all that information for free. And it's not just stuff you can read online because anybody can go into Google the Marchman Act. How does it really, really work? Like, how does it work in the real world? What
Mhm.
can I really expect? Right.
Correct.
And so I share, a lot of our experience in the real world, dealing with these cases, going to court, dealing with the, opposing counsel, their loved one, the judges. This is how it really is in the real world. And so I put that out almost every single day. There's a video out online. And actually, ironically, people call and say, oh, I want to talk to the guy on TikTok, or I want to talk to the guy on YouTube. And I'm always pleasantly surprised. I'm like, wow, they're actually searching for this stuff on
They
TikTok,
are.
on YouTube.
They
And I'm
are.
like, this is great. I'm putting it out there. People don't have to spend any money to get it. And they get the real information, the real answers. And then they can decide if they want to talk to us about what options are available for their family. Is this a good fit? Are they willing to make that commitment? Are they ready yet? And maybe they are, and maybe they're not. So
Absolutely.
they can call the office, they can speak to. I have two amazing ladies who run our intake department, Brittany and Rachel. You can have a free consult with them. They have resources, the videos. I have an ebook on both of our websites. There's a boatload of stuff out there, and I give it away for free so that people can get the information that they need, and they can even talk to us for free. So people need this information, Sendra. They
They
shouldn't have
do.
to pay to get it.
They do. Contact Sendra D. She is all in. I'm all in. And don't do it the way I did, because the thing is, I'm type A. You tell me I can't do something, I'll show you I can.
I'm
Because,
going to tell you, you are a walking. First of all, recovery itself is a miracle, but the fact that you could do it on your own, I'm going to tell you. I tell families,
like I said, it's not for the faint of
I
heart.
take the
And
time.
yeah, I treated this like the MBA. I went to get the MBA after I got sober, but it was
I'm
very
going to tell
tough.
them it only happens in movies, except for one person that I've met. in 31 years of practice. You're the only person I think I've met that really that did this. I mean, I meet people that went into treatment, but they had to. I think you're really an inspirational figure, Sendra.
I did it in heels. I did it in stilettos, and I look good doing it, except behind closed doors where I was just crying and rocking in bed. But guess what? You don't have to do it like me. There are professionals like Mark who are waiting to assist you, to help make the journey a little bit more lighter for you and your family. Don't do this alone. Don't do this alone, because there are so many resources now. There are meetings. You can go to alcoholicsanonymous.org, I think it is. Just Google whatever it is. There's anonymous everything now. And if it's a sex addiction, there's that too. There is a debtors anonymous. There is so much. Just reach out to me. I am here for you, and I love you very much. Mr. Astor, it has been a pleasure, and I'm so glad you jumped ship and came to the United States long ago to be part of this American culture movement of recovery. And let me tell you, in London, they're fantastic meetings as well. I went to some amazing recovery meetings in London, all over the UK. So you guys are catching up to us. But thank you again, and you come back anytime. Let me know what topics you want to talk to, and audience, let us know what you'd like to do. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share, and also go to his website, subscribe to his newsletter and to Mark's newsletter. And until next time, I love you very much, and stay strong and stay safe. So thanks for watching. Of course, I just want to remind you, first of all, I want to say thanks for watching, but I want to say from my heart, Sendra D, I want to remind you to grab your copy on Amazon and let me know what your thoughts are, what feedback you have, what you would have liked me to speak about. Of course, we're on this journey together. So Amazon, Kindle, paperback, Sendor Inner Luxury. And for those of you who are ready to dive even deeper, you can get ready because there's more coming. Sendor Guide to Luxury Living and Emotional Balance. That's going to be available very soon. So stay tuned, keep watching. I will announce. Follow me on my social medias as I tease a little bit of this and a little bit of that for your highest good. Remember, luxury isn't just a lifestyle. It is absolutely a mindset. And I don't know about you, I want my mindset to reflect all of the highest frequencies available to us humans. Till next time, don't forget, grab your copy on Amazon, Sendor Inner Luxury, unlocking the secret to your luxurious self. Until next time. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the world of sacred luxury. I hope today's episode has inspired you to embrace the finer things in life and to create spaces that resonate with your deepest desires. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share with all those who appreciate the art of living well. For more insights and exclusive content, visit us at sendortv.com or all our social medias, which is on Instagram, Facebook, Parler, Truth Social, LinkedIn. Find us there. Until next time, remember, luxury isn't just about what you own, it's about how you live. I'm Sendra D, and this is a Sendor Sacred Spaces Luxury Unleash. You can also find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube for the latest episodes. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. We definitely want you to join this community. This is something you won't regret. Until next time, don't forget to unleash your inner luxury.